Hello, and welcome back to US History and Elections. It is the 27th of October. We are 9 days away from Election Day, and this election is really, really heating up right now because we have so much going on. First of all, in pretty much every single state right now that allows it, early in-person voting and mail-in voting is underway. We have seen record queues in pretty much every single state. There's videos of people waiting in queues for hours in New York City, hours in Atlanta, and also in rural counties and places like Nevada and Arizona. This election is looking like a lot of people are going to come out early to vote, and we have seen that with over 30 million people having already voted early, whether that be by mail or whether that be through early polling stations that have already opened early to allow for in-person voting. Now, I have a map right here. It is pretty much filled with all these safe states, competitive in no scenario, in my opinion. And what I'm going to do, as I have always done over the last few months, is go through these states. I'm going to be ranking them likely, lean, or tilt. Likely states are going to be won by the respective candidate from 15 to 5 points, lean states from 5 to 2 points, and tilt states are going to be won from 2 to 0. Now, there's many states which I'd love to just put in a toss-up column right now, but I'm going to characterize every single state in this prediction, and I'm going to give you an idea of who may be leading from my analysis, my experience, looking at certain polls, historical trends, etc. I'm sure there's going to be people who disagree with me because of how close this election is, but I'm going to go through it and you can see why I have these projections. So I'm going to be going through the likely Republican states first of all. These realistically are not going to be very much challenged by Democrats unless there is a sleeper, and I mean big sleeper wave for the Democrats. This includes Texas, Alaska, Florida, Maine second, and Ohio. Now, out of all of these states, the one that I think probably is going to be the closest is Texas. This is simply due to demographic trends. We have seen Texas become progressively more purple over the last 8 years. And coupled with that, we have a unpopular Republican incumbent senator, that being Ted Cruz, in a much closer Senate race than many thought would actually happen, even up to maybe only a month ago, between the current House Representative, Colin Allred. And this is pretty much going to make Texas the most close one out of these. All the others are pretty much going in the other direction. Alaska is actually going to be fairly close, but I think that is solely down to both the House representative race with Mary Potola, the incumbent Democrat. Of course, Alaska is one at-large district, and the way that they do their voting with ranked choice voting. But these states are pretty much confirmed for Donald Trump at this point, though they're going to be won by a margin of about 5 to 15 points. Now we're going to move over to the Democratic column. I'm happy to put some states, and some states I'm happy to include, and I'm going to explain why. And this can actually be seen as a much better idea of the sort of trend we're going to be seeing in the national result as well. So the typical ones, such as New Mexico, Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire, alongside New York and New Jersey, as well as Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, which is now pretty much a lean Democratic district because of the areas that the Democrats are seemingly picking up votes in this election or in this cycle. We saw it in 2022, the white college-educated suburban voters. That is pretty much the makeup of a large majority of Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. And it's going to be a really key point, that one electoral vote that it gives out, due to Nebraska's handing out of electoral votes, the same as Maine's. It's going to be really important when it comes to the final makeup of the Electoral College, particularly in this prediction. But I want to talk about not Minnesota, New Mexico, Virginia. These are always fairly close, the same with New Hampshire, but there's not been any significant polling or trends that are saying that any of these states are genuinely in play. I think some of them are going to be fairly close. Virginia, New Hampshire, we're looking about 5-6 points there. And Minnesota, I think, is going to be about the same. But I want to talk about New York and New Jersey. When Biden was in the race, there was talk that Trump was going to be actually competitive in these places. Now, this is because we saw poor results for them in the 2022 House races. Of course, the Democrats lost about 4 or 5 seats that realistically, in any normal cycle, they never would have lost these in New York. But New York is becoming more purple. Of course, when I say more purple, I mean it is still a safe Democratic state. But we saw in 2022, the governor race, Kathy Hochul only won by about 7 points compared to Lee Zeldin. And I think not as far as that, but I think the Democrats are probably only going to win New York by about 10, 11, maybe 12 points, because we are seeing, such as the New York Times Siena poll for the likely electorate in New York City. Of course, New York City being a city of tens of millions, over 10 million people. So, take this with a pinch of salt. But considering this is pretty much the city that swings the entire state, include Long Island, think about upstate New York past Albany. The current likely electorate is 66% saying likely voters, which is a key definition, say they're going to vote for Kamala, that's 2/3, and 27% said they are going to vote for Donald Trump. If you just want a better idea of how much previous Democratic candidates won New York City, Biden won it by 75 to about 22, 23. Hillary won it by about 20 to about 8. Hillary won it by about 80 percentage points to Donald Trump, receiving about 18%. So that's a huge swing. And New York has been getting redder ever since 2016. But again, similar in New Jersey, the sort of low propensity voters, some minority voters that Donald Trump has seemingly picked up. These are the sort of areas that Kamala Harris is doing worse with, but this could actually help her in the swing states where, if she only won the popular vote by about 1% or 2%, which you're seeing around the rough average of some of the more reliable polls, then that would typically have spelled doom for her. But if she's only losing this in safe states such as New York, such as California, of course California is a much safer Democratic state than New York is, then this actually doesn't put her as much risk in the swing states where she's actually holding on to some of the voters that she needs the most. And trends that we're seeing in places like New York City in polling don't seem to be happening in more consequential cities like Philadelphia, which is a really important Democratic bastion in order to win Pennsylvania. But I want to move on now. I want to go into lean Republican states. I'm happy to put Georgia and I'm happy to put North Carolina into this categorization. Now, I know in my last one I had the Democrats having a tilt margin of victory in North Carolina. That was essentially a toss-up. But with the more recent polling that I'm seeing out of this race, I'm still not sure how this is going to go, but I feel more confident that the Republicans are probably going to keep these southeastern southern states, parts of the old South. I believe they're going to keep them into the Republican column that typically they have been, other than 2020 in some scenarios. Of course, North Carolina, the only one of the big 7 swing states that we are talking about this cycle to have been won by Donald Trump. He only won it by a percentage and a half back in 2020. And this is the only state that Democrats are actively looking to pick up. But I do think we're seeing, record numbers of early turnout, especially in those counties that were heavily affected by Hurricane Helene only about 3-4 weeks ago. And these are the sort of areas that people, of course, like the necessary aid is going to them. And, we're seeing a much quicker rebuilding effort, and early voting actually is allowed in more counties. And, the necessary provisions are being provided for those affected counties. Asheville, the Democratic city, also included in that. But I'm seriously not seeing the sort of numbers or the sort of polling trends that realistically the Dems would have to have a good night to win in North Carolina. But again, I think it's just really impossible to tell how this election is really going to shape up, what parts of the electoral demographics are going to shift, which ones are going to stay. And we're seeing, quite varying things. Some polls are saying that Latinos are going to vote for Harris for 65 to 35. Others are saying it's going to be more like 55 to 45. That's a huge 10-point shift. There's tens of millions of Latinos in this country, and they could swing states such as Arizona, such as Nevada, such as Pennsylvania even. We're going to have to keep a close eye on those voters. And realistically, the polling numbers are not consistent enough to me for making any predictions. However, Georgia is the one that I'm more consistent in. If you go to the top battlegrounds in RCP, pretty much all of them are under 1% and effectively just toss-ups, because margin of error is about 3 points in all of these, and swing state polling is always a lot more spread out and a lot further from the actual results than it is compared to national polling. Georgia, however, is the most Republican out of all of these on the RCP, about a 2.2 polling average over the last few weeks of fairly decent high quality polls. But again, high quality polls to be found in swing states such as Georgia are very hard to come by. Joe Biden winning the state in 2020 was a massive upset, but I'm seriously not seeing the huge amounts of voter turnout in the rural counties, which is where the Democrats need to get rural African American votes up. That was the backbone to their victory. Of course, the suburbs in and around Atlanta was a main strategy and part of the Stacey Abrams Democratic machine that helped them narrowly win Georgia by about 13,000 votes in 2020. We are seeing some of that match turnout in the counties of DeKalb, Fulton, in and around Atlanta. However, some of the more rural counties around the rest of the state, which the Democrats need to do quite well in, they're going to lose these counties at large, but they need to be getting a significant minority and they need to be getting that number, which we really are not seeing at the moment in early voting. Of course, there's still about a week left. Things could change, but not the numbers I'm seeing enough of in Georgia and in North Carolina, even though I don't like to take too much of a look. But it is worrying if you are trying to if you are trying to plot a very narrow path to victory in Georgia if you were a Democrat. So I'm not going to put anything into the lean Democratic column because all the rest of the states I am happy to put in tilts because I think they are just that close. I'm going to be putting Nevada and Arizona into tilt Republican, and the other states, the three blue wall states in the Midwest, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Now, of course, as you can see, this kind of puts Harris as the most narrow at such a narrow margin of victory in the Electoral College. And I think it could be this close, or we could be seeing blowouts. We could be seeing Kamala Harris winning in pretty much all these swing states, bar probably Georgia and probably North Carolina. We could also be seeing Trump completely sweep all the 7 swing states that he has to win, and he would be getting 312 electoral votes. Just want to show you this is what it would be looking like right there. But I would have given my explanations for these, and I'm going to be starting with the Republican states in the Sun Belt. Now, Arizona, of course, had always been trending blue. It's been trending blue since the days of Obama. But Hillary Clinton came closer, Biden won it in 2020, and I do think Arizona is actually just not looking the best if you are a Democrat hoping to win. Now, I think there's a lot of competitive congressional races. You have the 6th, the 1st, and I also believe the 2nd is a lot more competitive than people think it was going to be. And the Senate race, of course, Ruben Gallego is going to win that Senate race. In my mind, there is almost no doubt that Kari Lake, who was rejected in 2022 when she had the best chance of winning, and the polling is heavily favouring Gallego at the moment, I would be massively shocked if Kari Lake pulls off an upset in the Senate race. But I just don't think there's enough ticket splitters. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to vote for Ruben Gallego and also vote for Donald Trump, which seems kind of crazy when you see the platforms they're running on and the rhetoric that they espouse. But I do genuinely think that people are more fed up individually with Kari Lake, but are willing to put their trust in Donald Trump. And again, this is going to be a margin of victory less than 2%. 1.5%, Biden won it by about 0.8%, I do believe, something around that, maybe 0.7 in 2020. It was about 20,000 votes that time. Extremely, extremely narrow. And we're going to be seeing a very, very narrow result there. However, Nevada is really interesting because I've been doing a lot of deep diving into the early voting there. Been following John Ralston's early mail voting blog and pretty much just mapping out how the rural areas, which are deep, deep, deep red, have been turning out at a higher rate than Washoe County in the west, which is home to Reno, the second largest city, and Clark County, the southeast, home to Las Vegas and the Las Vegas metro area. Simply, the rural areas have been outperforming those counties which Democrats need to have an advantage in. But again, we do not really know where these voters are coming from. Are these low propensity voters? In that case, then Donald Trump is easily going to be winning Nevada, and it would probably be more than 2 points. However, if it was just Republicans that typically would have voted on election day, but because their state Republican Party and Donald Trump and his campaign are telling them to go out and get your vote in early, then we could see a huge cannibalization of their election day vote. But at the moment, we're just seriously not seeing the numbers. The Democrats need to put up a good challenge come election day. And if I was a Democrat, I would be slightly worried at the moment. like I said, 7 days, there could be a huge spike in Democratic numbers in the mail-in process because, of course, that's where the Democrats typically vote early. But unless we see that, and again, I'm going to be doing another prediction about this time in about a week or so when we have a lot more information on early mail-in votes and we have a better idea of what the percentage turnout is like. But I'm not seeing the numbers at the moment. So that's why these two Sunbelt states are going narrowly Republican. However, I'm putting all the Rust Belt states in a narrow Democratic column for the moment. Now, there's many pathways in which I see Trump winning all three of them. And there's many pathways in which I see Pennsylvania being the most Democratic out of them all. There's so many technical things going on in these states. Of course, Michigan, we've seen Trump campaign there only today and yesterday, I think, and he was getting support from local Arab American leaders in and around Dearborn, which is a suburb of Detroit, and that's a worrying sign. If there's going to be a 2 or 3% vote for Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate, that could spell doom for Kamala Harris's chance in Michigan, where she typically does rely heavily on these voters to vote for the Democratic Party candidate. But of course, you have the strong Democratic areas such as Lansing, such as Grand Rapids, such as Detroit, of course. That is one of the most Democratic areas, along with Flint as well. There's big Democratic centers, and the polling isn't that bad for them. Again, if you want to go onto these, polling on 538, all of these blue wall states are dead even, and the current lead that Trump has is 0.2. Essentially, that's a tied state. Wisconsin 0.2 and Pennsylvania 0.6. So I just want to tell you that it's pretty much a dead heat. It's well within the margin of error. Those leads pretty much mean nothing. It's all about who goes out to vote and which side gets their base out to vote. Now, Pennsylvania, the Democrats have historically had huge advantage in the early voting process. And the thing is, they actually have a current return edge over Republicans, percentage-wise. Of course, not number-wise. The Democrats are always going to massively outperform Republicans in Pennsylvania. But the return edge of requested ballots to actually return ballots is much higher. It's about 5% higher in Pennsylvania for the Democrats than the Republicans, which is the opposite compared to Nevada. So it's really interesting to see if that actually turns out to be anything. Of course, we could just be chasing shadows. People are trying to analyze the early vote too much, in my opinion, and there's still so much outstanding early vote. We got a whole week. I think there's going to be another 30 odd million people that are going to be voting early. So it's really way too early to tell what these early voting numbers mean. But I'm confident at the moment in just about putting these 3 blue wall states into the Democratic column. But like I said, anything in a tilt column is essentially a toss-up, in my opinion. These states could be all going for Kamala, could all be going for Trump. It's really going to be hard to see, and I think we're not going to have a better idea, unfortunately, on election day. It's going to be a long night on election day, and we're not going to get the results of some states, specifically Pennsylvania, which is the tipping point state in pretty much every projection this time around. And in this scenario, Trump could win any single one of these swing states in the Midwest, and he would win the election. But this is my projection for the 27th, 9 days out from election day. If you have any comments, please put them underneath my video. I want to see what you guys have to say. So thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to be doing my Senate predictions, my House predictions as well in the next week, so watch out for those. And I'll see you all again very soon.